because of my physical issues from my accident, exercise and sports and things, I had to be very conscious of what I was doing. So for me, it was all about nourishing my body. And being a naturopath for all those years, of course, nutrition was a big focus of mine, I should say. But it got to my early 30s and it just wasn't enough. It wasn't working. The energy was setting in. My weight was increasing, Cherry, and I've never had weight issues in my life. I was that sporty teenager. I, always had good nutrition and things, and it just didn't make sense. The hair was starting to thin, the energy was so fatigued. My menstrual cycle was starting to go all out. I remember being in clinic thinking, I'm preaching how to eat and how to live, but physically I wasn't representing that myself. And it was this really torn moment of, I know there's more for me available, and it's just, where do I find it?
Hi, and welcome to the Metabolic Balance Stories podcast. This is where we share real stories and insights into metabolic balance, personalized nutrition, eating well, just generally getting well and rebalancing life. Today, I'm delighted to share that I'm joined by a wonderful metabolic balance practitioner from regional New South Wales. Rachael Fattore is a naturopath, trained since 2008, I believe, Rachael. And you became an MB practitioner in 2021. And I am just really pleased that you're joining me today, and a big hello to you.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. So thrilled to be here. Thank you.
So, Rachael, can you just share, what led you to naturopathy, actually, even in the first place? Sort of.
To my journey to, endeavor into naturopathy was almost my own healing journey. So I had been battling with chronic pain management. Unfortunately, I had a serious accident as a teenager, and that led to a number of different things unfolding in my life. But prior to that, I was a very sporty, young lady, and I always remember my mum taking me to the health food store and, getting me some echinacea and things like that, and just always looking for natural ways to support my health. And it's the funny thing is, Cherry, I was studying sports media at the University of Canberra, and I was working in the health food store of a pharmacy, and the penny just dropped, like, why don't I study this? So I got the hell out of that course, and the rest is history. So it's definitely, first and foremost, it was my own healing journey that led me there, and then just that passion to want to support other people.
Yeah, cool. And I think that's a really it is a common reason why so many of us do actually really move into natural medicine. I'm the same. It was a healing journey for me as well. But so you had this accident. I didn't know this, and but it's so often there is sort of something that really triggers the problem. That it's almost like a snowball, isn't it, or a cascade? It kind of, one thing moves into another. So, can you share a little bit more about where your health went then?
Yeah, definitely. It was a serious accident. So, some girls and I were actually hit by a motor vehicle. But it wasn't just the physical body that was affected, as we all know in this health industry. Mentally, it affected me over these years too, with post-traumatic stress disorder. So anxiety and mental health became a real focus for, where that unfolded, which is where, I typically niche as a naturopath too for that stress support and, that poor burnt out woman that we see trying to juggle everything.
Yeah.
But so for me, it was almost like that evolution of going through initially the physical ailments and the emotional, and then even I'm now nearly 41, and still going through those motions of that healing journey. So I, look, we all have our story, Cherry, and it's so important to really listen to what the person in front of us, is needing and requiring, because it might just be that they're needing a bit of emotional support. But when we see that unfolding in their physical being, that stress and that weight accumulation, and that's what I found, like, just over these years, the body just started to fail in different regards. And yeah, quite simply, it didn't represent who I was preaching to be, which was really tough as a naturopath over these years.
Yeah. So chronic fatigue, was that one of the main things that you were experiencing?
Yeah, so do you know what? Like, to be honest, my 20s, my husband and I, we had 3 beautiful children. So I'd had that chapter, concluded by age 28, so to speak. And like, to look at me back then, quite a healthy frame and what have you. But honestly, Cherry, it was into my 30s that things just started to fall off the rails. And that's where it unfolded to what we're going to be discussing in a moment. Um, but the fatigue, being a uni student back then, juggling young children, it was a lot. So definitely that burnout story and that cortisol response was firing very high back then.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you were trying various, so you'd finished your naturopathy. Uh, so how old were you when when you graduated from that?
Oh gosh, early 20s.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, so you were so all through that 20s and like young babies and everything like that, you had you had the knowledge, you had still you and you were implementing a lot of your naturopathy knowledge. But but then in the 30s still, because I think this is an interesting aspect to really talk about too, that as professionals, we are not super women somehow. It's like we are still totally normal people.
Oh gosh, there's no pedestal, is there, Cherry?
No, I fell off mine years ago. So, but yes, that's, and this is, I relate really strongly. I remember this kind of thing as well. But you have all the knowledge, but you implement a lot of stuff, but it's still sometimes stress and like you say, even that PTSD or the cortisol and the response is still having a big, strong impact and knocking you sideways.
Definitely. And how that also unfolded, and you don't realize it while you're in that moment living it, but, in reflection, like, the hormones were starting to change, definitely into the 30s. And there was all these little subtleties coming in because of my physical issues from my accident, exercise and sports and things, I had to be very conscious of what I was doing. So for me, it was all about nourishing my body. And being a naturopath for all those years, of course, nutrition was a big focus of mine, I should say. But it got to my early 30s and it just wasn't enough. It wasn't working. And this is where, you know, things just started to unfold. The energy was setting in. My weight was increasing, Cherry, and I've never had weight issues in my life. I was a sporty teenager. I, always had good nutrition and things, and it just didn't make sense. The hair was starting to thin, the energy was so fatigued. My menstrual cycle was starting to go all out. Um, and it just I remember being in clinic thinking, I'm preaching how to eat and how to live, but physically I wasn't representing that myself. And it was this really torn moment of, I know there's more for me available, and it's just, where do I find it? Um, and you know how luck and the universe works, Cherry. It's just, you start hearing a little whisper about something, and like, oh, this metabolic balance. And then I was like, okay, what's this? And then, you hear it again, months later. And what led me to getting to that point was, I had a client that was desperate to lose weight, and we'd been doing all the naturopathic support. And I said to her, "Look, there is this program I could study." And I said, I'm pretty sure that you would get your results if I studied it and coached you through it." And she's like, "Well, Rach, can you do it?" And like, honestly, I'm like, well, yeah, I could do this, couldn't I? So it's just funny how everything just starts to come together and it's that series of events. And do you know what? Never look back, Cherry. That nudge was just the right path for me.
So that was back in 2021, that you
Yeah. So, and interestingly, at the start of 2021, like as I said, I was starting to have all these signs and symptoms of my thyroid being out, but it was really getting dismissed. Like I'd gone to my GP. And, for people that don't realize, when you're getting your thyroid stimulating hormones checked, it is a really large reference range. And for any further testing to be done, you have to fall outside of that range. And for me, I was still sitting in that. So there was just no continuation of care. It's just like, oh, you're just a young mum, you're juggling everything, you're just tired. And it's like, no, there's more to this. And I deserved more as well. So that you know what it's like, Cherry. I just dug a bit deeper, dug my heels in, and wanted to, wanted to research a bit more. Um, and that's where I did some private testing, and that's where we discovered Hashimoto's disease. So finally, I realized this is what's driving, that burnout feeling, that the weight gain. By this point, Cherry, I was up to 73 kilos and I'd always sat around that 60 or below. Even my last child I had, I got back down to 63 kilos, but it wasn't me, Cherry. I was always that size 8 person. Yeah, so anyway, I finally had the answer, but I just needed the next step. What do I do with that information?
yeah. So that's when you did MD?
Yeah, so October 2021, I had the pleasure of working with you and studying MB. And for people that don't know, we have to jump into our own program, as practitioners. And it's the best way to experience so that we can mentor our clients through. I actually pulled out some of my little post it notes, Cherry, from my
Oh, really?
program.
Amazing.
And, so I had a little reflective one for week 7. I reflected that I'd lost 9 kilos, and I wrote myself a little reminder, health is wealth. But do you know what, Cherry? What I didn't say to you before was prior to that, I knew I was eating naturopathically, whole foods and things. And I was going back to the gym, so I started to rebuild with the exercise and going most days of the week. And you know what? Yeah, it was just silly. Like I was starting to gain weight, and then I dropped the 2 kilos, gain it again, drop it back down. So I was fitter and healthier in that light, but it was not showing through. I wasn't someone that looked like they were going to the gym most days of the week.
So this was before you did MD, you started trying to go to the gym at that point, because I think that's an important thing to share, especially for Hashimoto's, because Hashimoto's is the immune system that is driving the problem. So it is not that you're eating too much or that you're lazy, which is that awful thing that is kind of thrown out that, oh yeah, eat less, exercise more, which that that isn't the solution. When something there is really driving the problem, you've got to actually fix the driver, or address or manage the driver properly. Is probably a better way of talking about it.
And exactly, and at that time, my knowledge was, I felt like I was eating healthy. So my next step was, oh, okay, I need to move my body more and, get healthier in that aspect. But my body just kicked up a stink. It was almost like, no, this isn't the right step. Um, and yeah, and I'd been doing that for a few years by this point, Cherry, like getting back into the gym. And yeah, it was frustrating to say the least.
Mm. But it's really important as well that you relate to how women who come to you are feeling, in the fact that because you could totally argue, yeah, it's 73 kilos. Well, that's not a big deal, really, is it? I mean, you'd had 3 kids. Many people could almost say, well, that's just normal. That you're holding on to a bit more weight because of 3 pregnancies, etc. But you didn't feel like yourself. That's what you just said.
Oh, and as I was saying, like, after my 3rd baby, I'd actually dropped back to that. I remember being at my first follow-up appointment with my GP, and, when you're laying on the table and they're just checking because 'cause I'd had a cesarean, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing, like, you've just snapped straight back." And I remember being so, grateful and what have you that, oh, my body was, taking care of itself. But that story, changed over the coming years, and yeah, as I said, it just felt like the wheels were falling off at that point. And interestingly, Cherry, like, the clients I see, they're predominantly women in their, mid-30s, 40s, and beyond
Mhm, mhm.
here in clinic, and they represent where I was 5 years ago. I'm just exhausted, Rach. I'm struggling to get motivated. Everything feels like a chore. Like, the brain fog that they're experiencing, that sluggish tummy. What I hadn't said also, Cherry, like, I would have identified with having irritable bowel syndrome back then as well. So a lot of gut issues that can go on with having thyroid issues. I was always conscious around what I was eating, not choosing to eat something slightly out of the norm if I was, out in public. Whereas, now I can confidently navigate, traveling and going to restaurants and things. Irritable bowel's been non-existent the last, 5 years. So, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, so you had been trying to, use just naturopathy, incredible, it's an incredible, toolkit that you have already at your disposal, but it wasn't actually helping you address this problem. Am I correct?
Exactly, and that's where, we can tell people to eat gluten-free and what have you, which is a common advice we'll give to someone with Hashimoto's. But there's another level of personalized nutrition that we're needing for people, and that's where, yes, we're talking about me losing 13 kilos and what have you, but the bigger story for me, Cherry, is I've avoided having any medication all this time. I'm not on thyroxine. I haven't had to have any medication. I'm following that, the maintenance world of metabolic balance using naturopathy. But yeah, loving life. And you know what? Like, with my health journey, Cherry, because of, the physical concerns that I've had from my accident as a teenager. But every time I go and see a specialist or what have you, you declare that you've got Hashimoto's, and they're like, "Oh, so you're on thyroxine?" I'm like, "No." Why aren't you on thyroxine? I said, I don't need thyroxine. I said, my levels are beautiful. So it really baffles the medical field that, we can do this in with whole foods. It's amazing. It really is.
Yeah. I think it's that whole thing that you managing things is you could do it so well. It's probably important to say here we're not saying you're cured either. Hashimoto's is something that is the immune system is primed essentially, isn't it? And it can rear its little head in protest at any point. So I think this is probably another important point to probably share because we know with Hashimoto's we can get some beautiful results. You're 13 kilos down, feeling fantastic. But it isn't a case that you can just can just eat in a standard 21st century way again, like with eating old anything you like and kind of just anything that's presented to you.
Exactly. And what I emphasize to clients is while we're, in the motions of metabolic balance, it's all a learning experience. We're listening to how our body feels. I'm educating them around, like for me, when I was doing all that exercise at the gym, it wasn't a positive thing. So with Hashimoto's, as you're aware, it doesn't like to be hammered at the gym. It wants to adopt more, lighter styles of exercise, flexibility and strength and what have you. But it's not designed to cope with, doing a HIIT class every day of the week and things. So it's educating clients around, well, what's a safe place for your body. Hashimoto's, it's like the monkey on the shoulder. Like, it wants that safety and security moving forward. So we have those conversations around, maintaining, the health with the food and what have you, but it's also a lifestyle shift predominantly too. And stress management is key. And yes, so there's always ebbs and flows, as we're all human with that. But there's always something to learn out of those experiences.
Yeah. And you've got the blueprint in essence of how to actually restore balance whenever something does go a little bit like when you go on holiday or when there's a bit of an extra stressy period, which is going to happen because we're just human, and you've got 3 kids and you've got life and all that kind of stuff. So, but you know how to go back to it. That's what I always really like to stress. It's the flow into focus, leaning in somewhere else and then leaning back into, what would you share with that?
Yeah, I word it to my clients that metabolic balance becomes like the cement foundation of the house for me. So it's where you build from. So like my husband and I celebrated our 40th in Vietnam last year, which was wonderful. But we were both hanging out to get back to our metabolic balance program when we got back. So as much as we loved experiencing that, and beautiful for our connection and what have you, but like we've said on the plane coming home, I'm making that vegetable soup in the morning. So I actually had contacted my mum and I said, "Can you make sure those veggies are in the fridge?" Because my husband and I we're resetting the next day, and we literally did. Woke up the next morning, reset with metabolic balance, and felt amazing. And that's what I say to clients, like, this molds into your life. We're not saying you can't go away on a holiday, but you've got the essence there. Like, it's so easy to eat an apple a day where you are. It's easy to drink your water. Couple of bites of protein first, like they're just such easy fundamentals that you can continue lifelong. But the safety for me is knowing that I have such a unique program that I keep coming back to. It's like my how would I word it? It is my foundation. It really is. Yeah, and I can't speak more highly of it. Even got my mum. You can see there's a painting behind me for those listening, but I got my mum to paint an apple for my office
I was looking at that. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
because it's become such a pivotal part of my life and my healing journey. And I want to tell the world about it. So yeah, and I even have the painting in my office for it.
I love that. I did not know that. I was actually admiring that apple because apple. I mean, I have a few apples dotted around as well. My home actually, and I'm always drawn to anything apple. I have to be honest. But being called cherry, I'm always a bit aware that I got cherries and apples going on. Bit of a fruit bowl.
The irony, Cherry, is before doing metabolic balance, I apples weren't a major part of my life, and I know that sounds silly for a naturopath, but I grew up in a home where my mum experienced irritable bowel syndrome as well, so apples weren't part of our staple foods because that would flare her tummy, and do you know what? I think I've missed, like, 1 day since becoming an MB practitioner of having an apple a day, and it's just like, where was this all my life? But, so easy and versatile,
Yeah.
and people are like, "Oh, yeah, I can eat an apple a day, that's easy."
Yeah. So you now use metabolic balance, in your clinic for your clients. Is there any particular stories that you'd share from over the years that sort of have?
Yeah, so in terms of the theme of thyroid, I have a beautiful client I'd love to share about. Um, Still an existing client, and so she joined me 5 months ago. Has a few other health concerns going on at the moment. So, which in a way has been really wonderful because we've been having regular blood tests and seeing her endocrinologists and what have you. And it's completely changed how she's living at the moment. So she's a friend of mine as well. And she celebrated with me the other day that she's dropped 20 kilos in our 5 months together. She goes to the gym. It's so funny. When she joined, she said, "Rach, I don't know how to cook. I'm not a cook." And I said, "I've got you." I said, "You don't need to be a gourmet chef to do this. It could be just that you've cooked a piece of chicken on the barbecue and you got a salad." I said, "The magic's in what's suited to your body and the amounts and what have you." And And I'm just so proud of her. She has just really taken to it. So I pulled out her pathology, and her thyroid stimulating hormone when we started was 4.2 and on thyroxine. And her T4 to T3 conversion, it was really suboptimal. So for those that aren't aware, it basically means, the thyroid's not functioning, to suit her. And of course, that was adding to her weight gain. Brain fog, so she's in a high position workplace, so she needs to be mentally sharp, and she was like me. She was frustrated. She's like, "Rach, I'm gymming, I'm trying to take care of myself, I'm doing all the things, I'm just stuck." And yeah, so the other day with her endocrinologist, her thyroid stimulating hormone was down to 1.08. So as a naturopath, we love it sitting between 1 and 2. So yeah, exactly where we wanted her. But more importantly, her conversion rate of that T4 to T3 is optimal. And funnily enough, her endocrinologist, he had weighed her and he said, "You've dropped 20 kilos," because she'd just had an appointment with him prior to starting the program. And he's looking at her bloods and he's like, "Hmm." He's like, "What are you doing?" There's something going on here. And she went on to explain, "Yes, I'm seeing Rachel. I'm doing metabolic balance and I'm doing really well." And he looked at her and he goes, "Well, keep doing what you're doing. It's obviously working for you." And, that's music to my ears when we get acknowledged by specialists and endocrinologists. And I've even had a recent client, Sherry, type 2 diabetic, and halved her medications within a couple of weeks. And again, this is a different endocrinologist, but he said, "You're doing well. Like, this is the best results we've had in many, many years." So I just love it. And the stories like that are popping up all the time, Cherry. But that one just, yeah, because honestly, she just feels like, me 5 years ago.
Mm. Oh, it's really special though, isn't it? It's each person. That's what it's why I love doing this podcast and just hearing the stories. It's all about just the individual people, and it's because it's the life that you get back. It's the ability to feel yourself like good again, like really just good in yourself from inside out. That's and this is how I relate to this completely, and why the passion that I have, and you get it too. It's just individual people just feeling normal and being better in themselves, but happier mums, happier friends, happier wives, happier everything.
How I word that to my clients, Cherry, is I make them really realize that it's not just their own journey that they're doing. I call it the ripple effect. So when they're taking, better steps with their health, when they're feeling more vibrant, the energy shifts in their relationships, in their workplace. That it's such a happier household. I had a client last week. Her husband, for moral support, supposedly, is, eating well alongside his wife, who's one of my clients at the moment. And she said to me he's dropped 9 kilos as well. Just, and they're apparently telling everyone at a barbecue. So I heard of other clients the other day. And I love it because it's a heartful moment when you hear how that is not only positively impacting that person's life, but the flow and effect to other people. I know I became a better wife, a better mum, a better practitioner when I started to feel better in myself, and that just keeps permeating. It really does.
Yeah, yeah. I often really think it's that happy, it's just that happier home life when we're feeling just energized, when we can actually wake up and not feel groggy, when we aren't snapping at our kids, which I certainly remember doing when they were little, before I got myself sorted. And then the other thing, I think the ripple effect, especially within the family, like you say, this that client's husband started eating well, but also the kids are just watching. Well, I'm just eating lovely protein and veggies, and it looks vibrant on the plate again, doesn't it? It's that vibrancy, the colors, and then kids are saying, "Oh, I'll have what you're having."
Yeah, and do you know what, Cherry? Like, I teach all my clients about mindset and meal prep and what have you, because I do feel that they're two key pillars when we're changing our health. And my eldest moved off to uni the start of last year, and my only my only concern was not following how we practice with our nutrition and what have you know, because you know what uni life can be like. And you know what? It's just it's such a proud mum moment because he's talking to me about, "No, I can't do that on Sunday, mum, because that's my shopping day. I do my meal prep for the week." And I'm like, "Oh my god." I'm like, "Yes, yes, so I've done it." Like, that's my mum achievement there. But do you know what? But that flows onto when he later on has relationship. You know what I mean? Like, it's a continuation. So yeah, it doesn't stop with us is what I'm trying to say. Our healthy habits can flow into our children. Yeah, so I just love it. Sorry, personal share there.
No, and I think that just sums it up really well. You never know the education or just what kids are. Kids pick stuff up on from the whole spectrum, all the positive to the negative. They observe, they pick up, and when we have a really nice, healthy relationship with food, with healthy eating, with just looking after ourselves, and that self care from just balanced, healthy eating of no, we don't, and we don't talk about negative foods really, do we? We're talking about what do we need, what does my body need. There's no negatives.
Exactly, and when we walk into the supermarket, we're basically following those outer areas, aren't we? We're going the produce section, the meat and veg section, we might go down the pulses aisle and what have you. But, like, we're getting rid of those anomalies that aren't serving us, and it's our nature intended, whole foods, it's just yeah, in hindsight, Cherry, it's always a no-brainer, isn't it? Like, this is how evolution has evolved, like, that's what we're coming back to these grassroots, and that's what serves our body.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense. Yeah, and we see the results from it. It's actually you see the results every day in clinic.
Yeah. And honestly, that's why this makes this job so rewarding because you see that positive shift in those clients. And yeah, and they tell everyone they can just how amazing it is. And it's just healthy eating, personalized nutrition, yeah, matched to their biochemistry. And yeah, I can't speak more highly of it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. It's been so wonderful to hear your story because I didn't know your story before. And, we've been working together, what, 6 years, 5 years, whatever. And yeah, it's just so lovely to actually really hear that. And it's obviously, thrilled that things are just going so well for you. And it's wonderful to have you as an MB Pracky.
Yeah, no, and I thank you, Cherry and Metabolic Balance. It's an incredible journey, and yeah, just so grateful that I went down this path. And yeah, so thank you. Thanks for having me.
And it's that funny thing, isn't it? Sometimes you just hear something and you just realize, yeah, I need to follow that. I need to investigate that further. So if anybody is feeling a bit of a nudge, if anybody is thinking, oh, actually, what would you say to them?
Look, I honestly think just knowing your self-worth and realizing that there's a healthier version of you just waiting to be unleashed, and yeah, just take that leap of faith and trust in the process. And we have amazing practitioners that are ready to guide these clients out there. And yeah, honestly, there won't be any looking back. You deserve, you know what it's like, Cherry. We've spent many years caring for other people, but we can really have a huge impact on other people's lives the more that we invest in ourselves. And as I said, with that ripple effect, it really starts with us. So happy household comes from starting with us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. So, Rachael Fattore in regional New South Wales, but you also work online as well.
I do. I'm on telehealth as well.
So, yeah,
Definitely at Griffith Wellness Clinic.
yeah. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you again, and I think that's just such a lovely way to understand that MB, or just like Rachel says, self worth. just taking the plunge and saying, I'm worth it. I love that message. Thank you. And do join me again for further metabolic balance stories. And you can also check out more information and find a practitioner near you on the website, metabolic-balance.com. And you can find your practitioner there. Thank you again, and we will catch you next time.